Top Gun arrived in 1986 carrying far more weight than its glossy surface initially suggested. It emerged at a precise cultural crossroads, when American cinema was redefining heroism after years of doubt and ambiguity. The film did not simply tell a story about fighter pilots. It carefully reshaped how courage, discipline, rivalry, and identity would be visually and emotionally understood for an entire generation. What makes it enduring is not only what appears on screen, but the complex machinery of intention, compromise, and symbolism operating just beneath it. The origin of the film can be traced to a short magazine article describing the U.S. Navy's elite fighter weapons school. On paper, the piece was technical, procedural, and largely inaccessible to the general public. Yet producers Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer recognized something cinematic in its structure. They were not interested in military realism as much as they were drawn to ritual. The idea of a closed world where only the best were allowed to compete, judged by rules both strict and unwritten, echoed the classical myths of warrior academies and knightly orders. Top Gun was conceived less as a war film and more as a modern myth set inside steel cockpits. The collaboration with the U.S. Navy was essential and deeply influential. The Navy did not simply provide aircraft and locations, it actively shaped the film's moral framework. Every script revision passed through military approval. Any behavior that could suggest recklessness without consequence or authority without respect was softened or reframed. Even the tragic elements were carefully calibrated. This collaboration resulted in a paradox, a film that appears rebellious on the surface, yet ultimately reinforces institutional order. Maverick's defiance is never allowed to fully dismantle the system. It must be absorbed, corrected, and finally validated by it. Tom Cruise's casting was initially met with hesitation. He was talented, charismatic, but physically smaller than the stereotypical action hero of the era. That perceived limitation became a narrative advantage. Cruise played Maverick not as an invincible warrior, but as a man driven by insecurity and legacy. His intensity feels internal, not muscular. The character's need to prove himself is never abstract. It is rooted in unresolved questions about his father, about honor, and about whether instinct alone can justify risk. Cruise insisted on grounding Maverick emotionally, even when surrounded by spectacle, which gave the film a psychological undercurrent often overlooked. The aerial sequences, widely praised for their realism, were the result of immense logistical difficulty. The F-14 Tomcat was never designed to accommodate film crews. Cameras were mounted inside the cockpits with severe limitations, and actors had to operate them themselves while flying at extreme speeds. This constraint created something unexpected: genuine reactions. The strain visible on faces, the sweat, the brief moments of fear or disorientation were not entirely performances. They were physical responses to forces that could not be simulated on a soundstage. In an era before digital effects, the danger was real, and the audience senses it instinctively. Tony Scott's visual approach transformed the material into something closer to a cinematic ballet. His background in advertising shaped a style obsessed with light, texture, and motion. Sunsets were not simply backdrops but emotional signals. The aircraft were photographed like living creatures, gleaming and predatory. Scott slowed time during moments of tension, allowing the audience to feel the weight of anticipation rather than the speed of action. This aesthetic choice separated Top Gun from conventional action films and aligned it more closely with romantic cinema, where feeling outweighs logic. The film's famous training sequences were constructed with deliberate ambiguity. Victory is rarely absolute, and rules seem flexible depending on perspective. This was not accidental. The screenplay avoids clear-cut moral binaries, presenting excellence as something fragile, easily undone by arrogance or hesitation. Iceman, often misunderstood as a simple antagonist, represents institutional perfection. He follows procedure, minimizes risk, and values teamwork above individual expression. Maverick's conflict with him is not personal, but philosophical. Their rivalry reflects an unresolved debate between innovation and tradition, a debate still relevant in many professional spheres today. One of the film's most discussed aspects, decades later, is its emotional intensity between male characters. At the time of release, this was largely unexamined, yet it contributes significantly to the film's power. The bonds formed in Top Gun are forged through trust, rivalry, and shared danger, not through dialogue-heavy exposition. Physical proximity, eye contact, and silence carry emotional weight. The now iconic volleyball scene was not written into the original script as a narrative necessity. It was added at Tony Scott's insistence to visually reinforce camaraderie and physicality, using movement and music to express connection more than words ever could. The music itself plays a crucial narrative role. The synthesizer-driven score and carefully selected songs do more than evoke the era. They define the film's emotional rhythm. Certain themes return like memories, anchoring the audience in specific emotional states. Flying is not merely depicted as a technical skill, but as a transcendent experience, elevated by sound. The music blurs the line between triumph and melancholy, reinforcing the idea that greatness often comes paired with loss. Tragedy enters the film quietly, but decisively. When it arrives, it reshapes the narrative's emotional gravity. The loss experienced by Maverick is not sensationalized. It is presented with restraint, almost discomfort. The film refuses to offer immediate catharsis, instead allowing guilt and doubt to linger. This choice deepens the story, transforming it from a spectacle into a reflection on responsibility. Maverick's subsequent hesitation is not weakness. It is a human response to the realization that skill does not guarantee control over fate. Top Gun also functions as a cultural artifact, consciously or not. Its imagery influenced fashion, music, recruitment, and even how aviation itself was perceived by the public. Navy enlistment reportedly surged after the film's release, a testament to cinema's power to shape aspiration. Yet beneath that influence lies a more nuanced truth. The film does not promise safety or certainty. It presents excellence as something earned at high cost, demanding discipline, sacrifice, and acceptance of loss. What ultimately gives Top Gun its lasting resonance is its understanding of cinema as experience rather than explanation. It trusts images, sound, and performance to communicate meaning without constant clarification. Its secrets are not hidden in obscure trivia alone, but embedded in choices of framing, tone, and omission. Watching it closely reveals a film far more deliberate and introspective than its reputation suggests, a work that uses spectacle not to distract, but to invite the audience into a carefully constructed emotional sky where ambition, fear, and identity endlessly intersect. The presence of romance in Top Gun often appears straightforward at first glance, yet its construction reveals careful calculation rather than spontaneous chemistry. The relationship between Maverick and Charlie was shaped as much by studio expectations as by narrative need. In early drafts, Charlie's role leaned closer to a conventional romantic interest, but revisions gradually reframed her as an intellectual equal, someone who understood aviation theory even if she did not fly. This decision was deliberate. The filmmakers wanted her authority to feel earned, not decorative, positioning her as a stabilizing force in Maverick's volatile world. Kelly McGillis played the role with a restrained confidence that contrasted sharply with the youthful bravado surrounding her, grounding the film emotionally without undermining its mythic tone. McGillis's casting itself carried symbolic weight. Taller than Tom Cruise and possessing a calm, composed screen presence, she subtly inverted traditional power dynamics. Their scenes together rely less on physical dominance and more on verbal rhythm and silence. Long pauses, half smiles, and moments of hesitation replace overt declarations. This approach aligns with the film's broader aesthetic, where suggestion carries more power than exposition. The romance is not designed to distract from the central narrative, but to mirror it, offering Maverick a form of connection that demands vulnerability rather than competition. The editing of Top Gun plays a critical role in shaping how the story is perceived. The film moves with confidence, rarely lingering longer than necessary, yet it knows when to slow down. Editors Chris Liebenzahn and Billy Weber balanced kinetic aerial footage with quieter moments of reflection. This rhythm prevents the spectacle from becoming numbing. Each flight sequence feels distinct because it is framed by emotional context, whether anticipation, rivalry, or loss. The audience is not asked to admire technical prowess alone, but to feel the psychological stakes attached to it. One of the film's most subtle achievements lies in how it handles national identity without explicit commentary. Flags, uniforms, and rituals are omnipresent, yet the film avoids overt political statements. Instead, it communicates ideology through atmosphere. Order is beautiful. Precision is noble. Discipline is reassuring. These values are embedded visually rather than argued verbally. The result is a film that feels patriotic without delivering speeches, allowing viewers to absorb its worldview almost unconsciously. This approach explains why its influence extended far beyond cinema, shaping how military professionalism was imagined in popular culture. Behind the camera, the production faced unexpected challenges that shaped the final film in unseen ways. Weather conditions frequently disrupted flight schedules, forcing the crew to adapt constantly. Some of the film's most iconic shots were born out of necessity rather than design, captured during brief windows when light and cloud formations aligned. Tony Scott encouraged his cinematographers to treat these moments as gifts, embracing imperfection rather than resisting it. This philosophy infused the film with a sense of authenticity, despite its stylized surface. The supporting characters in Top Gun serve specific narrative functions that extend beyond their limited screen time. Goose, portrayed with warmth and humor, embodies balance. He is talented, but cautious, confident yet self-aware. His presence humanizes Maverick, offering a glimpse of who he might be without his obsession. The bond between them is constructed through shared routines and unspoken trust, making their relationship feel lived in rather than scripted. This authenticity amplifies the emotional impact of later events, transforming what could have been a plot device into a defining moment. Val Kilmer's portrayal of Iceman gained depth through deliberate restraint. He resisted the temptation to play the role as antagonistic caricature, choosing instead to emphasize professionalism and control. His calm demeanor, clipped speech, and steady gaze communicate authority without aggression. This interpretation complicates the narrative, forcing the audience to question their allegiance. Iceman is not wrong in his criticism of Maverick. He is simply unwilling to romanticize risk. This moral ambiguity elevates the film, positioning it closer to character drama than simple action spectacle. The screenplay's structure reflects classical storytelling principles adapted for a modern setting. The narrative follows a disciplined arc, introducing conflict, escalating tension, and resolving uncertainty without unnecessary detours. Yet within that structure, the film allows room for moments that exist purely for mood. Scenes set in bars, on airfields, or in quiet rooms contribute atmosphere rather than advancing plot. These moments enrich the world, suggesting lives beyond the immediate story and reinforcing the idea that Top Gun is a closed ecosystem with its own rhythms and traditions. Cinematographer Jeffrey Kimball's work deserves special attention. His use of contrast and color temperature differentiates emotional states with subtle precision. Warm tones dominate moments of connection and reflection, while cooler palettes define competition and isolation. Cockpit interiors are often bathed in harsh light, emphasizing vulnerability, while exterior shots soften the world into abstraction. This visual language communicates internal states without dialogue, trusting the audience to feel rather than be told. The film's cultural reception evolved over time. Upon release, it was celebrated for its energy and spectacle, yet critics were divided. Some dismissed it as superficial, others praised its technical achievements. With distance, its craftsmanship has become more apparent. What once seemed excessive now reads as intentional stylization. The film's commitment to mood, image, and sound reveals a confidence rarely seen in studio productions of the era. It was unafraid to prioritize sensation over explanation, believing that emotional clarity mattered more than narrative density. Top Gun also captures a transitional moment in Hollywood itself. It bridges the grounded masculinity of earlier decades with the polished, image-driven storytelling that would dominate the late 20th century. Its characters are larger than life, yet emotionally accessible. Its world is idealized, yet tinged with vulnerability. This balance explains why the film continues to resonate with audiences who experienced it firsthand and those discovering it later. It offers not just nostalgia, but insight into how cinema can transform specialized worlds into universal experiences. As the film unfolds, it becomes clear that its greatest achievement is coherence. Every element, from casting to music to camera movement, serves a unified vision. Nothing feels accidental, even when born from constraint. Top Gun does not merely depict excellence, it embodies it through craft. Its secrets are not confined to behind-the-scenes anecdotes, but are embedded in the precision of its construction. To watch it closely is to witness a film that understands the power of discipline, not just as a theme, but as a guiding principle of creation itself. The technical authenticity that Top Gun projects is built upon a foundation of carefully managed illusion. While the film is celebrated for showing real aircraft in real flight, much of what appears tactically precise is, in fact, cinematic choreography. Real dogfighting protocols are rarely followed exactly as depicted. Engagement distances are shortened, maneuvers exaggerated, and radio chatter simplified. These alterations were not made out of ignorance, but necessity. Real aerial combat, governed by radar systems and beyond visual range missiles, lacks visual drama. The filmmakers chose clarity over accuracy, creating a version of aerial warfare that could be understood instinctively by an audience unfamiliar with aviation. What matters is not realism, but readability. One of the film's most enduring visual signatures is the recurring image of jets slicing through clouds and sunlight. These shots were extraordinarily difficult to capture. Pilots were instructed to repeat passes multiple times, often at great fuel cost, to allow the camera crew a second chance at perfection. On several occasions, pilots performed unscheduled maneuvers simply because the light was right. These moments, born from instinct rather than planning, became defining images. The film's beauty often comes from embracing chance, a philosophy that mirrors Maverick's own reliance on intuition. There is a persistent myth that Top Gun is a recruitment film disguised as entertainment. While the Navy undeniably benefited from its release, the reality is more nuanced. The military's involvement ensured favorable representation, but it did not control audience interpretation. The film presents discipline as admirable, yet also shows its emotional cost. Pilots are isolated, relationships are strained, and identity is tied dangerously close to performance. The glamour attracts, but the subtext warns. This duality explains why the film resonated with viewers who admired its world without necessarily aspiring to enter it. Several continuity errors slipped into the final cut, subtle but telling. Insignia appear and disappear between shots. Helmet designs shift mid-sequence. Aircraft identification numbers change depending on angle. These inconsistencies were not oversights so much as casualties of a fragmented shooting schedule. Aerial footage was often captured months apart, sometimes with different jets standing in for one another. Rather than disrupt the film's flow with reshoots, the editors trusted that emotional continuity mattered more than technical precision. For most viewers, they were right. The script underwent significant changes during production, particularly in its final act. Early versions resolved Maverick's arc more ambiguously, leaving his future uncertain. Studio pressure pushed for a clearer affirmation of competence and belonging. The resulting ending reinforces reconciliation over rebellion, aligning Maverick with the system he once resisted. This shift reflects a broader Hollywood trend of the era, where individualism was celebrated but ultimately reconciled with authority. The film thus walks a careful line, allowing defiance only insofar as it leads back to order. The character of Viper, Maverick's instructor, serves as a quiet narrative keystone. His limited screen time belies his importance. As a living link to Maverick's father, he embodies institutional memory and unspoken truth. His calm authority contrasts sharply with the volatility of the younger pilots. When he speaks of the past, it is not with sentimentality, but with clarity. This moment reframes Maverick's internal conflict, shifting it from unresolved myth to acknowledged reality. It is one of the few scenes where the film allows itself stillness, trusting that a single conversation can carry the weight of an entire backstory. Top Gun's treatment of failure is unusually restrained for a film of its genre. Loss is not followed by revenge, nor by dramatic speeches. Instead, it manifests as hesitation, silence, and doubt. Maverick's struggle afterward is depicted through absence rather than action. He is present but diminished, flying competently yet without conviction. This portrayal respects the psychological impact of trauma without naming it explicitly, a choice consistent with the film's preference for implication over explanation. The film's sound design further reinforces its emotional architecture. Engine roars are heightened, not to overwhelm, but to immerse. Radio chatter is layered to create urgency, yet remains intelligible. Silence is used sparingly, making its presence felt when it arrives. In moments of crisis, sound drops away, forcing the audience to share the character's isolation. These choices reflect a sophisticated understanding of how auditory cues guide emotional response, particularly in large-scale spectacle. Top Gun also reflects a transitional moment in how masculinity was portrayed on screen. The characters are confident, competitive, and physically capable, yet they express vulnerability through action rather than words. Grief, admiration, and fear are conveyed through posture, proximity, and ritual. This approach aligns with older cinematic traditions, where restraint was considered a form of strength. The film does not mock sensitivity. It simply encodes it within a language of professionalism. The cultural afterlife of Top Gun has at times overshadowed the film itself. Parodies, references, and iconography have simplified it into a collection of catchphrases and images. Yet, beneath that surface lies a carefully constructed narrative that rewards close attention. Its influence on later action cinema is undeniable, but few successors have matched its cohesion. Many borrowed its style without understanding its discipline. Top Gun's power comes not from excess, but from control. Its legacy is also tied to timing. Released at a moment when audiences were ready for confidence without cynicism, it offered reassurance without naivety. It acknowledged fear without surrendering to it. The film's optimism feels earned because it is tested. Characters stumble, suffer, and doubt before they prevail. This structure, classical in its restraint, gives the story durability. It does not chase trends, it commits to a vision. Watching Top Gun today reveals a film acutely aware of its own artifice. It knows it is crafting a myth, and it embraces that responsibility with care. Every choice, from lighting to casting to pacing, serves the same purpose: to make the audience feel the weight of excellence. Not as fantasy, but as aspiration, tempered by cost. In doing so, the film transcends its era, remaining not just a relic of the 1,980 seconds, but a study in how cinema can elevate skill, discipline, and emotion into something timeless. As Top Gun reaches its final movement, the film reveals how carefully its emotional resolution has been engineered. The concluding aerial engagement is not merely an action climax, but a symbolic test. Maverick is placed in circumstances that mirror his deepest fears, forcing him to confront the very doubts that have defined him. The enemy remains faceless and unnamed, a deliberate choice that strips the conflict of political specificity. What matters is not who the opponent is, but how Maverick responds under pressure. The battle becomes internal as much as external, transforming combat into a rite of passage rather than a geopolitical statement. The decision to keep the adversaries anonymous was controversial even during production. Some argued it weakened realism, yet it ultimately strengthened the film's universality. By removing national identity from the enemy, the story avoids becoming dated. The conflict exists in a kind of mythic vacuum, allowing audiences from different eras to project their own anxieties onto it. This abstraction reinforces the idea that Top Gun is less about war than about performance under scrutiny, a theme that resonates far beyond military settings. Maverick's final triumph is deliberately understated. There is no extended celebration, no triumphant monologue. His victory is acknowledged through gestures rather than speeches, a nod of respect, a shared look, acceptance rather than applause. This restraint aligns with the film's overall philosophy. Excellence does not demand noise. It demands recognition from those who understand its cost. The reconciliation between Maverick and Iceman, often reduced in popular memory to a simple handshake, carries deeper meaning. It signifies the resolution of opposing philosophies, not the defeat of one by the other. Talent and discipline find balance, suggesting maturity rather than conquest. The film's final scenes return the story to Earth, both literally and emotionally. Maverick's choice at the end is not framed as surrender, but as integration. He does not abandon his identity, he refines it. The closing moments suggest continuity rather than closure, implying that growth is ongoing. This refusal to present a definitive ending reinforces the film's realism on a psychological level. There are no final answers, only progress. Behind this carefully controlled conclusion lies a production shaped by excess and precision in equal measure. Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer were known for their relentless pursuit of impact, often pushing crews to their limits. Their influence ensured that Top Gun never settled for adequacy. Every element had to feel heightened, memorable, iconic. Yet, it was Tony Scott's discipline that prevented the film from collapsing into spectacle without substance. His insistence on coherence transformed raw energy into controlled momentum. The film's legacy cannot be separated from its influence on the language of cinema. After Top Gun, action films increasingly embraced stylization over realism. Slow-motion, silhouetted figures and music-driven editing became standard tools, yet few films matched Top Gun's sense of purpose. Many imitated its surface without understanding its structure. What makes Top Gun endure is not its imagery alone, but the rigor behind it. Style is never random. It is applied with intent. Over time, reinterpretations of the film have multiplied. It has been praised, criticized, deconstructed, and reclaimed. Some view it as a celebration of hierarchy. Others see it as a study in controlled rebellion. These interpretations coexist because the film allows them to. It does not dictate meaning. It invites engagement. Its confidence lies in its refusal to over-explain, trusting the audience to navigate its emotional and symbolic terrain. The performances, often overshadowed by the film's technical achievements, deserve renewed attention. Tom Cruise's work captures a moment before stardom hardened into certainty. His Maverick is restless, searching, incomplete. Val Kilmer's Iceman, cool and composed, reveals complexity through minimalism. Kelly McGillis brings gravity to a world dominated by youth and bravado. Together, they create a dynamic that feels specific yet timeless, grounded in human conflict rather than genre convention. Even the smallest details contribute to the film's resonance. Costume design reinforces identity through repetition. Call signs replace given names, emphasizing roles over individuality. Language is clipped, functional, efficient. These choices construct a world where belonging is earned through performance, not personality. The viewer is not merely observing this world, but learning its rules intuitively. Top Gun ultimately endures because it understands cinema as a synthesis of craft and emotion. It respects its audience enough to avoid simplification, even while delivering spectacle. Its secrets are not hidden behind trivia alone, but embedded in decisions that shape how the film feels rather than what it says. Every frame reflects an awareness of legacy, not just within the story, but within cinema itself. To revisit Top Gun is to encounter a film that knew exactly what it wanted to be. It did not chase relevance, it defined it on its own terms. Its confidence, restraint, and emotional clarity place it firmly within a classical tradition, even as it embraced modern technique. That balance is rare. It explains why the film remains vivid decades later, not as a relic, but as a reminder of what disciplined, intentional filmmaking can achieve when ambition is guided by craft rather than excess.